If you are ready, let us draw back the curtain of time and take a silent journey into the heart of Anatolia. Now close your eyes and imagine yourself in the middle of a vast, boundless plain. This is a place thousands of kilometers and tens of thousands of years away from our present day, on the fertile lands of Şanlıurfa. The night has wrapped the earth like a velvet blanket. Billions of stars are glittering in the sky with a brilliance you have never seen before. There are no false lights of cities, no engine noise, no haste of the modern world. There is only the whisper of the wind among the grasses, and perhaps the howl of a jackal from far away. In the middle of this plain stands a gently rising hill. In the daylight, it might seem like an ordinary mound of earth, but at night, under the stars, it takes on a mysterious air, as if it were the very place where the heart of the world beats. The local people call it Göbekli Tepe, the belly hill. This name, for thousands of years, seems to whisper that it is not just a hill, but that it holds a secret beneath the soil. Our story does not begin when this secret was asleep, but when it was born, carved, and entrusted to the earth. We are going back precisely 12,000 years, so far back in time that the magnificent pyramids of Egypt do not yet exist. The Sumerians have not invented writing. Humankind has not even fully learned to till the soil and settle down. Think of the people of that time. They did not live in houses like we do, but in nature itself. The sky was their roof, the earth their bed. They moved with the rhythm of the seasons, wandering from land to land in pursuit of their prey. They survived by following the tracks of gazelle herds, wild aurochs, and cranes. For them, every tree, every rock, every spring had a meaning. And most of all, they read the sky. The cycle of the moon, the position of the stars, these whispered to them when to migrate, when the hunt would be plentiful. And so, a community of these people gathered in this fertile land, given life by the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. They were not beings who were content merely to fill their stomachs. Within them was a deep curiosity, a quest that we are still trying to understand today. They questioned the cycle of nature, life and death, and the infinity of the sky. They had a giant question in their minds. Who are we? And what is our place in this universe? To seek the answer to this question, they needed something. A gathering place. Not just a cave to shelter in or a campfire to share their hunt, but something more. A sacred space that would nourish their souls and connect them to one another and to the cosmos. And they fixed their gaze upon the gently rising hill in the middle of the plain. It seemed to be the place where the earth and the sky met, as if it were closer to the stars, closer to the gods. And it was there they decided to build one of the greatest secrets of human history with their hands, their fingernails, and their faith.
Their decision was firm. They would not erect a simple structure here, but a monument that would leave a message beyond time. But how? They did not yet know how to work metal. Their most complex tools were cutters hewn from flint. But they had something stronger than metal, a shared dream and an unshakable faith. In the limestone plateaus near the hill, they selected enormous blocks of stone. With incredible patience, they began to separate these monuments, which we know today as T-shaped pillars, from the bedrock. Every strike was like a prayer. The sound of flint hitting hard rock echoed in the silence of the plain. This was the sound of a temple's birth pangs. It took days, weeks, perhaps even months to quarry a single stone. Dozens of people, using wooden levers and ropes made from animal hides, moved these massive pillars, weighing many tons. This was not a task that could be accomplished by muscle power alone. It required flawless harmony, a collective mind, and a spirit where everyone was locked on to the same purpose. Slowly, inch by inch, they began to drag the stones toward the hill. The people carrying them were not just moving a piece of rock. They were carrying their beliefs, their dreams, and the legacy they would leave to future generations. Each stone they brought to the summit was transformed into a being that seemed to breathe, because now it was time to breathe a soul into them. Again, with fine-tipped tools made of flint, they began to carve images onto these giant pillars, images of the animals they saw around them, hunted, feared, and respected. On one pillar they carved the relief of a fox, known for its cunning. On another, a crane, the master of the sky. On yet another, a wild auroch, symbolizing the power of the earth. Scorpions, snakes, wild boars. The stones became a living encyclopedia of their world. These were not just pictures of animals. Each figure told a story. Perhaps it was the symbol of a clan, perhaps a reflection of the star constellations on Earth, or perhaps it expressed humanity's fear of nature as well as its deep respect for it. Most intriguing of all were the giant pillars themselves. When looked at carefully, they resembled a human form. Long arms and fingers appearing on the sides of the pillars whispered that they were in fact stylized human statues. But they had no faces, because they did not represent a specific person, but perhaps everyone, their ancestors, spirits, or gods. They had no faces because the place they were looking was not this world where we exist, but the world beyond, where the stars reside. They began to erect these massive sculptures in a circular plan. Each circle was smaller than the last, like nested rings. They seemed to mimic a pattern spreading from the center of the universe, like the ripples created by a stone thrown into a pool. In the center, two pillars, larger than the others, were placed facing each other. They were the heart of this sacred space. Imagine a great fire burning in the middle of this circle at night. The light of the flame strikes the animal reliefs on the stone pillars. Shadows dance upon the stones. Foxes run, cranes flap their wings, snakes writhe. For the people there at that moment, it was a magical time when the stones came alive, when the spirits of their ancestors spoke to them. Perhaps they held rituals, offered sacrifices, and received news from the future by observing the sky. This was their meeting point, their place of worship, their house of wisdom. Hundreds of people from different tribes, perhaps traveling thousands of kilometers, gathered here at specific times of the year. They had not only built the greatest monumental temple in human history for a common purpose, they had kept it alive for thousands of years. These stone circles continued to bring people together for centuries, perhaps for 30 generations, perhaps 40. Fathers told their sons and mothers told their daughters the secret of this hill. Each animal figure on the stones became like a character in a fairy tale, known by heart. Those stones witnessed countless sunrises and sunsets. They felt the shadow of the clouds passing over them, the coolness of the falling rain. At night, they listened to the whispers of the people who came there to speak with the spirits of their ancestors. Göbekli Tepe was not just a temple, but also a school, a council, a center of identity. It was the beating heart of humanity. But time flows like a river, and slowly
it changes everything. Humankind discovered another of the earth's secrets. They learned that when they planted the grains from the heads of wild wheat, one seed would yield hundreds of new stalks. They realized that instead of hunting animals, they could domesticate them and form their own herds. They no longer had to migrate in pursuit of prey. They began to build their own villages, to put down roots in the soil. This was a giant leap for humanity, but every new beginning also meant the end of an old era. A new way of life brought with it new beliefs. Their heroes were no longer the wild aurochs they hunted or the foxes they fled from. Their new sacred things were the fertility of the seeds they planted, the loyalty of the animals they domesticated, and the water and earth that gave them life. The magnificent stones of Göbekli Tepe belonged to the world of their hunter ancestors. That world was slowly fading into a distant memory. So what would become of this most sacred legacy of their ancestors? They could not just leave it behind. They could not surrender it to the cruel hands of time and nature. And so they made a decision as monumental as the one their ancestors had made to build it. They would not let it crumble. They would put it to rest. They would give it back to the earth. In a final great act of reverence, they began the slow work of burying their own creation. Thousands of people, perhaps the children and grandchildren of the last carvers, brought earth from the surrounding plains. Basket by basket, they filled the sacred circles. They covered the watchful eyes of the fox, shielded the soaring wings of the crane, and gently laid a blanket of soil over the powerful forms of the aurochs. This was not an act of destruction. It was an act of preservation, a sacred burial. They were entrusting their temple, their universe, to the quiet, patient custody of the soil, ensuring that its spirit would not be scattered by the winds, but would sleep peacefully, dreaming of the stars from which it was born. And so the great temple vanished from sight. The towering stones, which had conversed with the cosmos for millennia, fell silent. The hill became just a hill once more, a gentle swelling on the horizon, its name eventually softening into a simple description: Göbekli Tepe, the Belly Hill. They buried their world not to erase it, but to protect it. And in doing so, they left a message sealed in time, a silent promise that one day, 10,000 years in the future, we would arrive, dig, and stand in awe, listening to the echoes of their questions in the silent gaze of the stones.